All right, guys, here we are again, week 7, the Reptile Hangouts podcast. As always, I'm one of your hosts, Charles, with Gecko Galaxy. Over here, I got it right this time.
You did.
Hey, over here, we got my brother, also with Gecko Galaxy, and down Chonda, we got our other brother from another mother, Gabe, with DIY Reptile Keeper. What's the USARK? Who are those people?
Who is USARK? Wow. Yeah,
Yeah.
so USARK, man. If you don't know who USARK is, you definitely need to check out USARK. They're the only organization in the United States that's fighting for our rights to be able to keep these reptiles. Legislation going on all the time, everywhere. You hear about the big snakes and things like that, but I got news for you. They're slipping stuff in there. They're coming for everything. So USARK has a team of lawyers working on it all the time. So definitely go to usark.org. And please consider becoming a member. It's very inexpensive, and even just a little bit helps, goes a long way. If we can get everybody in the community involved, we can really make a difference.
Yes, every little bit helps. But now, here we are. Without any further ado, introducing our very, very special guest this week, Mr. Bill Strand of the Chameleon Academy. Bill, how you doing tonight?
Hey, I'm doing great. Nothing better than spending an evening with good reptile friends.
Awesome. Well, we're very happy to have you.
Yeah. So how's things going in SoCal?
You know what? It's starting to get real cold. And so those of us who keep chameleons outdoors are having to consider, okay, which ones need to come in and which ones stay out.
Yeah. Do you keep a lot outdoors?
I do a
50-50?
lot of keeping outdoors.
Okay.
Especially, but I work with montane species like Jackson's chameleons and Honelii, the crested, the helmeted chameleon. Sometimes the common names are a little strange to say. And so they actually enjoy the cooler weather, and I have more of a problem during the summer than I do during the winter. So it all depends on the species and where they're from.
Awesome.
Gotcha. Well,
but you know what? I got a question here. How is my audio? Should I put on a headset?
You sound
no, audio is perfect.
Yeah.
In that case, if you're not getting any feedback or any crazy stuff, then let's sally forth.
All right,
let's do it.
Awesome. So when we get you guys on here, we want to know a little bit about your backstory. So we're going to ask the tried and true first question. How did you get your start in the reptile hobby?
All right. Well, unfortunately, it's probably going to be the same as everybody in the world says. We all kind of have the same story. Not everybody, but as a kid, just loved dinosaurs, and then I love birds and reptiles, but none of it really grabbed me until I met the chameleon. And once I met the chameleon, I knew that was it. And that was in grade school, like the late 70s. And I have not looked back since. That I found my calling.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Awesome.
That's great.
So now, sorry, I'm looking at my notes here, and it's just this question here. Can you tell us about your custom enclosure you made in an apartment you had one time? Similar to a TV show that we all know.
You know why he's laughing.
Well, as you know, when you live with other people, there are certain limitations that you have. Well, when I finally went out and got my first apartment, I decided, what in the world do I need a dining room for? And I just lined all the walls and the floor with plastic tarp, very thick plastic tarp. Nice. And I built little walls there, and I put trees in there. I had my lights. I had a misting system going on in there. So essentially, I turned my dining room into a free range. Now,
piece of a jungle.
Now, I'd like to say, everybody, when you're young, you do things that, as older, when you learn more, you say that's not the best thing to do, and I don't advise free range setups for chameleons, especially not when you're renting an apartment. But
did you have any problem keeping the water in? You must have had that thing sealed pretty tight.
I guess I did. I think. obviously I did, because when I removed that after who knows, a year or two, however long I was there, my dining room was pristine. I mean, I should have lined the entire apartment in plastic and had chameleons all over my entire apartment.
You could have got away with it, apparently.
Yeah. So that's the secret. That's the secret to getting your deposit back. Apparently, line the whole place in plastic.
So anyway, when you get in an apartment, my advice is to line the entire thing with plastic and bring in a bunch of trees and chameleons. There you go.
Solid advice. Yeah,
it's perfect.
Like
Guaranteed to get your deposit back.
Oh boy, I am so lucky that the apartment manager never decided that he wanted to come in and check the apartment, or that anything got broken so somebody had to come in and fix it. Because
wow, yeah, I didn't even think of that.
Well, neither did I.
Yeah, these are the kind of things.
I'm sure that would have been a heck of a surprise to walk into.
The kind of decisions you make when you're younger. Unfortunately,
they may say, "Hey, that's okay. He's got a bunch of stupid trees in here," but once they notice the misting system and the misting nozzle all over the place, yeah, then I've got some trouble. But that never happened, so I've got a great story to tell.
Yeah, that's a great story. That's that's awesome.
Now, I would like to say, everybody, it's very difficult to do a free range correctly. And back then, I didn't know the things I know now. And the only reason all of my chameleons didn't get metabolic bone disease, because there's no way I could get effective UVB in that situation back then, is because I took them out all the time to go for a walk with me and get natural sunlight. So here I am. I tell everybody, don't pick up your chameleons, don't handle them. They're not your pets. And so, but that's the reason why none of them got MBD. So there you go.
Nice. I've noticed, so recently I've become 120% addicted to chameleons. Everything about them.
Appropriate.
It's very appropriate.
Yeah. Good choice.
So a few weeks ago, we rescued a Calatratus veiled chameleon, and I forget to what the hell was I saying? Oh, yeah. Sorry. So we rescued this. I totally lost my train of thought. So we rescued this veiled chameleon, and it just completely took me over. And she's older. She's been around people, probably had a bunch of little kids poking and prodding her whole life. So she's a little more receptive to like the hand feeding, and she'll even come out on a branch. I had her on my hand one time. She got stuck in the screen, got one of her toes stuck. And then since then, I just recently got a beautiful panther from Fram's Cams, male amalo, gorgeous animal. And I noticed the difference immediately. It being a young, kind of gun shy animal, it just doesn't want anything to do with me. Won't take food off my hand, tongue. Doesn't want to come out when I'm walking through the room or anything like that. So I'm seeing him, from a beginning standpoint, and it's just infatuating me even more that this animal doesn't want to just. Now it's a challenge. I want you to be comfortable. So now I want you to eat from my hand. And
as this little guy gets older, they'll calm down. Right now, when they're babies, often they've got to be extra feisty to survive in the world, and so that's actually a good thing. If you want to look for the best baby, go for the one that'll stand up to you and wants to tear your finger off. That's the baby I'm going to choose, because that means that they've got the fight in them. And when they become adults, they tend to start calming down a little bit sometimes, for the most part.
I wanted to just sort of occurred to me. You said you got your start with chameleons pretty early on, or at least your start with your obsession. Did you keep that far back? Or oh wow, really? So what was your first species?
That would be a Jackson's chameleon, a Kenyan Xantholophus. That's the yellow-crested Jackson's chameleon. And back then, it was very difficult. There weren't a whole lot of chameleons available unless you were plugged in and you could find a bunch of good stuff. But me, as a 7th grader, I wasn't plugged in. And there's no internet. I didn't know any reptile people. I was the only reptile person in my
Yeah, people were still mailing photos of their available animals to people through the U.S. Postal Service in the 70s. I've heard those stories.
And so there was no way for me to. I'm sure if I tried, I don't know how I could have found other people. But anyway, if you went to your local pet store, it was very easy to find Jackson's chameleons because Leakey's son was just shipping them out hand over fist from Kenya. And so they were all over the place. And so that's what I started off with, and got a female, and she had babies. And so it was a class pet because my parents told me that I wasn't able to have chameleons.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I was slowly thinking to myself as you were going through that story, because I recall another podcast you did, and you talked a lot about your backstory. And I was like, man, he's got a lot of good stories as far as coming up in the hobby. Because I remember the part about not being able to keep it at your house, and you said you somehow
want to hear my
your
political campaign? I'll tell you my political campaign story.
The class
all right.
pet, it was
all right. I'll tell the story because it's actually a favorite of mine.
All right.
So I had been going through so many reptiles. I had a red-tailed boa, I had an iguana, and all those, and they were fun, but they didn't speak to me. When I found a chameleon, like I said, that was it. I knew that was my life right there. And unfortunately, by this time, my parents were sick of having this zoo in the house. And so to them, this was another reptile. To be fair, how in the world could they know that this was my lifelong calling? Back then, everything was my lifelong calling. And so they said no, which I was heartbroken. But after I got over being heartbroken, I started thinking, how can I get around this? Now,
we all do.
Now, when the law of the land says no, you're just thinking, okay, where's another law of the land? And I figured out, hey, how about if I get one at school? Now, all I have to do is convince everybody else that we are going to have a class pet. That was my grand idea. And I was pretty clever back then because I knew everybody, if I could just get everybody excited about it for a vote on the student council, then they'd get bored of the chameleon, and I would be the only one taking care of the chameleon. And summer's coming up. It has to go home with somebody. And so I've got all this going on in my head.
Very analytical. Great. I love it.
Oh, my goodness.
It's a great 7th grade brain.
And what is amazing is it worked out exactly that way.
Perfectly executed.
To the point where 2 weeks into summer, I remember my mother sitting in the backyard as I was running around with this chameleon, feeding it bees and flies and stuff, saying, wait a minute, we said no chameleons. Why is there a chameleon here? And you know what? I just ran my political campaign. I won, and we've got a chameleon.
There it is. The rest is history.
Yeah, I don't think I actually mentioned it that way. I think I just pretended like I didn't hear the question because I didn't want to get into that conversation. I was smart enough to know when to shut up.
Yeah.
Awesome. So you're arguably the expert on chameleon husbandry, and that's going to be our next set. Yeah, not really seeing as much information as detailed as yours, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, and I'll say, the podcast is really the reason for that. And although yes, I have over 4 decades of over 4 decades of experience, but really the number doesn't mean anything. It's what you do with that number. I mean, I've got people who have been doing the same thing for 20 years, and they say, I've been keeping chameleons for 20 years, so listen to me. But if you've been doing the same thing for 20 years and you haven't challenged what you've been doing, then you really don't have 20 years of experience. You just have 20 years of experience in that one narrow thing. So, and we shouldn't confuse that with having a wide range of experience. But here's the question. How do you get that wide range of experience? And this is why the last, 2015, I think is when I started the podcast. The last 6 years, 5-6 years, is the area of my greatest personal growth. And that's because I started the podcast. And the thing that, you guys are doing, gonna see this yourself. When you have a podcast or this video podcast, every week you're going to be bringing on somebody different who's going to be having a different perspective, different experiences. And as the host, you have to question everything that you thought you knew and bring in this new information. How does this fit in? And then next week's guest may say something a little bit different. And so you are in this constant you're constantly challenging what you think you know and constantly looking at it from different perspectives because you're talking to these people. And it's not like social media where you go on, like Facebook is horrible for this, where Facebook's all about saying what you know to be true and then defending it. So just the nature of what it is, it makes these siloed echo chambers. And so by having a podcast or a video, any sort of interview show, it's an amazing personal growth just by hosting the show.
Yeah.
And that's what happened to me.
That's awesome. That's what I talk about all the time. It's all about just growing and just trying to better yourself and better the way you keep and try new things, because that's the only way you're going to learn, just by trying new things.
And I got to say, of course, you've got to come at it with the right mindset of, I'm doing this for my personal growth instead of I'm doing this to bash the world over the head with my views.
Yeah.
And that happened to me. Was it 3-4 years into the podcast? I was presented with another perspective as to hydration. And it was almost completely opposite than what I had been used to and what I had been telling people. See, I'd been on a podcast and I've had these episodes and I've been telling people this particular hydration because that's all I knew and that's what it worked. But once I was presented with this new approach, as in nighttime, the hydration while they are sleeping is more important than the hydration when they're awake, which is totally not intuitive to us human beings. But in testing, that's what it ended up. I tested it out and I saw so many things fall into place that had been bothering me over the last 2 decades. And once you get to that point, you realize, okay, I've got to go back and change what I said before. And once you're a podcaster or a video guy, you're an interviewer, you've got all these episodes that now you've got to say, I can't have people start with episode 0 and then run into this and memorize all of this. And then when they get to episode 89, it's all of a sudden different. And so, when you're in a public education like this, you got to really be careful. And if you do a significant change in the way you look at things, well, you've got some explaining to do. And hey, if I'm in it for personal growth, then that's not a problem. It's embarrassing and it's frustrating, but it's not a problem. It's actually exciting because it means it's working and we're moving forward. So
the nighttime hydration is I've noticed a difference in my month of experience keeping chameleons. I've noticed a difference. I was trying like crazy to keep the humidity up right before bed. I was spraying. And then I ended up getting a Miss King and setting it up, and through your care summaries on the Chameleon Academy of hydration at night. Wow, that makes perfect sense now. They completely ignore the dripper. They're just like, it's not even there.
Perfect.
They'll look at it because they think it's a bug, and then when they realize it's not, they just walk away.
Yeah, and what he's talking about is For the longest time, we have been spraying chameleons with misting during the day and watching them drink. And we say, hey, good job, they're drinking. That is what we want to see. But there was always that question in the back of our minds. Why are chameleons always drinking? Because we know they don't get rain all the time. Yes, when it's the rainy season, they get rain all the time, but they don't get rain every day throughout the entire year. How is it that they're surviving if they have this voracious need for water? And what finally put it all in place was that chameleons in the wild would get fog banks coming in. They would breathe in humid air that would stop the dehydration, because if the air is dry, when you breathe out, you're losing moisture. And I mean, that's the same in humans. And
yeah,
and people have actually measured it in anoles, how much water weight that they lose from breathing. So we know this happens. And the more humid the air, the less dehydrated they get. And then if they have misting, they wake up to a world covered in dew, they get topped off, and then they spend the day without needing water. And so this switching to a method like that changed the whole approach to their hydration and actually their husbandry, because now this elevates humidity to a critical husbandry parameter, whereas before it was, whatever humidity is, it is. But now it's a critical component to hydration. And
and that's definitely a concept that applies to more than just chameleons. I mean, it could be used basically on every type of reptile.
Any arboreal reptile. And this is why having a show like this and bringing people on from different communities is just so eye-opening. Yeah. And I had this big long talk with Patrick Holmes from the Green Tree Python community, and we're talking about the same things. And just anyone who's got an arboreal reptile, we're all talking about the same things. And
yeah, we noticed that. We noticed that a lot because we all keep stuff that each other doesn't keep. Like Gabe has all types of crazy stuff. That's the exotic man right there. Anything big, he's got it. Nick keeps species of geckos that we don't keep. We all keep cresteds. None of them keep chameleons. And it's just like we constantly run into overlapping, husbandry tactics. Yep. Just talking about, I mean, every week we talk about it, and it's like, oh, whoa, I kind of do the same thing, and we're talking about completely different animals. So yeah, I think that's definitely good.
Yeah, and those of us who are involved with arboreals, it's a little bit more tricky to create an arboreal condition within a cage in a house. And so that's definitely, I don't want to say it's more of a challenge, because every ecosystem is complicated. Even a terrestrial animal, they've got so many different microenvironments that they're going to be going in and out of, and it's just a lot for us to unravel everything that's going on in nature that these animals live in. So yeah, it's a special challenge, but it's no more challenging than any other reptile that we're working with.
Oh man, no.
Yeah.
All right.
So moving on with some more questions here. Let's see, how many animals are you currently working with? I guess let's ask, how many species do you work with right now?
I think around 12, 13.
Okay.
I always say I'm going to count them, and whenever I do, I come up with a different number each time.
Well, everybody asks the how many individual animals do you have question, and then every reptile keeper, when they get asked that, they go, I don't.
And the thing is, when babies
so
are
I figure
born,
let's just do species.
That's a better question.
Yeah.
Because I've got
they do that.
I've got baby Jackson's chameleons. I've got baby Triceratops cristatus.
I heard you say in a podcast earlier that babies don't count in that question.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, babies don't count.
Especially when you're popping out 40 of them every time.
Oh boy, yeah, that's.
Yeah.
So we were curious about this because we've all looked at Chameleon Academy, and gone through it and stuff. And we noticed that you do sell, merch. Obviously, you got some merch,
How you
cool
doing,
cups and
Bernadette?
stuff. Yes, thank you for
Thanks
joining
for tuning
us.
in.
Yeah. But do you sell baby chameleons or young chameleons or anything like that, or are you just keeping everything in house?
I do sell baby chameleons when I have them available, but much of my breeding is done for experimentation. Like I'll have babies and I'll raise them in different conditions just to see the differences between them. Because whenever we're trying to figure out something about chameleon any husbandry, we need to compare groups where only one element has changed.
Yeah.
You can't have a chameleon in one situation and then 5 years later test it in another situation or somebody else's house, because the conditions are all different. What do they feed their crickets? What do they feed? What do they supplement?
Yep.
How much do they supplement with? And so for me to come up with some of the things that I do, I need to have them in as close the husbandry as close as possible to be able to extract anything useful. Otherwise, it's just conjecture.
Yeah, you need to have some sort of a singular variable that changes. Everything else you need to keep it fairly baseline.
Constant. Yeah.
Yep.
But other than that, I don't.
When you do,
I actually don't like selling. I don't like selling chameleons that much, and so
I get that.
Basically, I love breeding them and I love raising babies.
Yeah.
And so generally I just wait until when I have babies, I just keep them until people ask me if I have any chameleons that I'm selling. And
then maybe you'll be like, I got a few.
Say, I may. This is what I got.
I gotcha. Yeah, I feel the same. I mean, I breed and I sell crested geckos and gargoyle geckos currently, but the selling them is not as fun as doing the rest of the stuff. I do it, but it's not as fun. A little bit of money comes back into the collection, which is nice, but past that,
I'm actually kind of dreading that. I haven't sold it. Basically, every baby that I've hatched, I've kept because I'm getting rid of.
I don't know how that is, and it's not that easy to sell these days. You have to go to a platform and you gotta do all the ads. It's Facebook is no longer allowing you to. We can't just say, "Hey guys, I have this available," because Facebook will shut you down.
Yeah, you got to get real crafty about talking to people. On
Facebook
is about
sales. They're crazy. It's craziness.
And they're inconsistent. And you see people selling chameleons all the time, and you wonder how can they get away with it. Yet, I mean, there was a group I was part of, tens of thousands of members, and it just disappeared in the middle of the night. No explanation, no response as to what happened. And this was a group that had a no sales rule. So every time someone posted sales, whoa, get rid of it.
Kick it out. Yeah.
So that they'll go back 5 years and they'll find a post. Somebody said something about selling, so your group is gone. Like, geez, guys. So Facebook is a risky place to be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I feel like I kind of know the answer to this one, but I'm also excited to hear if it's a two-parter or it's probably a five-parter, to be honest. But in your experience, what's the most common beginner error besides trying to hold your chameleon all the time? Is that one of them? I think that's it.
The most common beginner error is probably getting the best deal. If you're trying to cut corners, or not necessarily cut corners, you're trying to get the best price, you're going to find somebody who's going to give you something where the best price is the best part of what you're buying. And when you're buying animals, that's not good. When you get equipment, that's the reason we have this very difficult product called the Chameleon Kit, which is very convenient, and is like $120, $140. You quotes get everything you need, which we spend so much time fixing that problem before it's either we fix the cage and everything, or else we fix the chameleon later. So,
right.
And the thing is, it's very difficult for people to know the danger, because they aren't necessarily saying, oh, I'm going to cheap out. They're saying, well, I don't want to spend more than I have to. And so it's like they can have the best of intentions and still fall into the trap of getting inadequate equipment. And really, how do you blame them? How do you know what is worth it and what isn't? And you don't until you're really part of the community. Another aspect to this is saying, hey, I'm going to get an adult wild caught because that's cheaper than a baby captive bred, and that sets you up for all sorts of trouble. I mean, yeah, it's great, it looks pretty, but
most of the time you're going to spend that money on a vet bill anyways after that.
Yeah, if you even have access to it. It's like Bernadette in the chat actually just said sometimes, especially if you're inexperienced enough to make some of these rookie errors, you're often inexperienced enough to notice the signs that will come along with bad health. So by the time you do say, hey, I think something's wrong, it's honestly often too late. Would you say they reward bad husbandry with dying?
I'm sorry, what was that?
I think you said one time that chameleons often reward bad husbandry with dying.
They do. I don't know if I said that, but boy, I'd like to take credit for that.
Yeah, that's about as bad as it gets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and it's a real problem because people just don't know. We don't have a consistent communication, a consistent message out there at the point of sale, because if they get to social media and start getting part of a community where they're going to start getting good information. And you look at our community and, oh my goodness, we have so much disagreement in the community, but at the core, it's pretty at the basics, you're going to be okay. But these people don't get to the communities when they're buying, and they don't know that they need to go to the community because the pet store person is so confident in what they're saying. And oh my goodness, here's a kit for the chameleons. I mean, it's all wrapped up in a bow. Why do I need to go and get more information? You don't, until you do, and you realize, oh my goodness, it didn't work out the way I wanted it to.
Yeah. For sure.
I mean, I worked at a pet store for a long time, and so did he. And we know exactly what you're saying. A lot of times, like, it's just easier to sell somebody a box with a bearded dragon on it, and be like, hey, this is everything you need, but now, now, especially like we've matured and we, learned more and stuff like that. And we realize that, man, it's wrong,
Yeah, but that pet store person is just doing their job, and they're doing what they're told. And when they're told by the big company that should know everything and put together this product in the first place, that this is all you need, then, I mean, how are they going to know the intricacies of chameleon care, bearded dragon care, White's tree frog care, or whatever?
It's not likely.
Python care.
I mean, even if you got somebody there who, has a decent base knowledge, really cares, they might have one of those things at home, but they certainly don't have all of them.
Okay. So a lot of us have a depth of experience, but we're probably not going to go work at Petco.
No. I won't work at a pet store again unless it's mine.
Yeah. Hey, you're probably right.
Yeah. Gecko Galaxy storefront coming soon.
Maybe one day.
And I'll say one of the most disturbing things is that reptile specialty stores that should know better, they end up cutting the corners. It's like, once you're in that situation, and pet stores are not the greatest profit center, it's like you're forced to cut corners. Is that the way it is? If that's the way it is, I know I wouldn't want to do it.
I've heard of a handful, through watching various YouTubers and things like that that are really trying not to do that. They're going with all captive bred stuff, no wild caught. From what I understand, in those situations, you're making a lot of money on dry goods. Animals are a much smaller percentage of your sales. So,
yeah, but of course, the problem is you can always find better prices online. Yeah. And so I unfortunately the retail stores, the brick and mortar retail stores are going to have an uphill battle. They've already had an uphill battle.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm sure. But so moving on to another question. This is one that I'm kind of interested in. Are you doing any collaborations with other chameleon hobbyists? Like, are you doing like group projects? You do your own like research, but or just like breeding things? Breeding projects
all the time. Oh yeah, oh yeah. We are always we've always got the collaborations, and we're working on things. Generally, do a lot of things behind the scenes. Whenever you do anything publicly, well, then you get a bunch of people who just want to troll it, and they don't. So there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes, but all the time. That's the wonderful thing about having a community, and you start making those connections with people that really care and want to know, and so you work with them.
That's awesome. I noticed. I recently followed Pardalis on Facebook. Mm-hmm. He was a podcast guest of yours.
Yep.
And he has just one of the most gorgeous first for Pardalis amelobes, I believe. I'm pretty sure it was amelobe, and he even put in the caption when he posted the picture. It's like you don't get this animal unless you make it, and it's just truly, it was insane.
You don't get this animal unless you mate, or
you
make it. Like if you unless you
okay. Yes. Okay, yeah. So he's talking about being very careful with how he does his breeding. And I know him, he is a stickler for lineages. So he's really looked at those genetics. He's made sure that they're as separate as possible. And the big thing is he raises his babies individually. He is the future of the chameleon breeding community. And right now, most breeders bin raise, and so they're raising babies in groups, which is a compromise in husbandry. And you talk to people, and they will defend it. They'll say, "I'm doing just fine," and then you ask them how they're making it work, and they'll talk about, "Well, I go in and I take out the bullies, the big ones, and they're going through all this work." And you say, "Okay, yeah, that's the point. You're going through all that work because it's a compromise." And Jonathan has taken that seriously and says, "I'm going to do it right." And he started off small because it takes a lot of room and a lot of resources to have all those cages. And so he started off small, and just every year he built on it to the point where now he can say he's giving you an individually raised panther chameleon, and it won't be long. I mean, other people are starting to take this to heart before the community realizes the value in that and starts requesting it, and then starts demanding it. And so what you're seeing here is the change. It's a start right now.
That's the eye in Pardalis, right?
Yep, exactly.
Individually raised.
Yep.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. Awesome stuff.
So the problems with raising in small groups, is it pretty much the same as other things? Like I used to breed bearded dragons years ago, and I would try to do them no more than like 3, because otherwise they would be biting each other's appendages off. Do we get the same type of things with chameleons?
Yeah, chameleons, you'll have a wide range of responses. Mostly when they're very young, it's going to be bullying and very passive aggressive, and this is where most breeders just don't recognize the signs. Oh, isn't that cute? They're climbing over each other, and they don't recognize that as a sign of dominance. And the effect of dominance is, I am going to take the best of the perching spots. I'm going to take the best of the food, and you, the submissive one, you're going to have to wait. And I've seen, there's dominance plays where they actually go and they snag the food that the submissive one was going for. This is what happens when you force chameleons to be together. When they start to get older, you're going to start to see physical attacking, nipped tail,
like your tail nipping,
and bite marks and B-grade animals. I mean, remember when I was breeding panther chameleons? It was great because I would get B-grade females, all these nipped tails and mangled tails. The females were great for breeding, but it's because the breeder kept them too long and they got mangled. This is because keeping chameleons together is a compromise. You can get away with it in some ways. I was able to raise, I've experimented with what can you get away with? Because for me to say individually raised is the way to go, yes, that's true. But it's good for me to understand what the limits are. And this is a lot of what I do. What are the limits? Where is that line? And because once you know where the line is, then you're able to talk intelligently about helping people through it. So I've raised groups of babies in a heavily planted 2x2 by 4 foot cage, what we usually call an adult cage. So I raised up four babies in there, and they did fine. Now, would they have grown faster if they were individually? Maybe. That just comes with time and trying things out.
And Bernadette asked a good question.
Yeah, I was just
at least I think it's a good question. How much space would you need for each hatchling to be raised individually?
Okay, I'm going to be more high level at this than giving a dimension. It is whatever dimensions you need to create the gradients that they need. And this is highly dependent upon what equipment you use. And so when we're talking about getting down into a small cage, all of a sudden our heat lamps are too powerful because they're starting to heat the entire cage. Our UVB is too powerful because it's too much. And so if you are able to miniaturize all of your heat and your UVB, I mean, I've got them in, 5-inch by 12-inch high, so 5-inch wide by 12-inch high by 18-inch deep. Those are the nursery cages that I worked with and I experimented with, and I was able to successfully create an environment in those dimensions to raise an individual baby up. But I'm not going to say that is the ultimate dimensions. And so, and this is the thing I want to be careful of is, and I know it's, everybody wants that simple answer. Well, what are the numbers? But the thing is, and this is the big challenge with the Chameleon Academy, I'm trying to get people to think about what they're trying to accomplish and then create the space that's necessary to accomplish that. And so you look at the care sheet, your babies, I mean, you can have panther chameleons, Jackson's chameleons, they can be in the same conditions as an adult if you give them the same space as an adult. If you shrink their space, you definitely don't want to give them the heat and the UVB that you give an adult. So it's really comes down to what space you need to provide for the animal the size that they are.
Gotcha.
Yep. Perfect.
And
that's perfect.
Yep. And I will say right now, the real answer is not always a satisfying answer, because the real answer is not nice and neat. And there's just so much understanding that's got to go behind understanding that answer. And well, luckily I have an infinite number of podcasts and I have a big website, and I can just, and every year I modify my care sheets and I modify how I present all of this to try to effectively communicate all of this.
Yeah, and that's awesome. I'll tell you what, that's something I would love to see more throughout the whole, reptile
community. For sure.
It would just.
And you know what? We are starting to get there. If you, I've seen a shift in approach, just philosophical approach. We're starting to see more people caring about the environment around their animal. And so it's not about wrapping a cage around a chameleon and collecting as many species as possible, but it's caring about the environment that's around the animal. And so with that it necessarily comes having to understand how to implement the care sheets that you see.
Yep.
How do you do that? And I see that shift happening. It's a wonderful place our community is going.
Yeah, it's just great. Bernadette in the chat actually just said, kind of learn to ask why does the animal require this, and not just, hey, what do I need to buy? Why do they need this? What benefit does this have in comparison to their natural habitat? And that's a good way to look at it. And I feel like this is a natural segue into bioactivity. Having bioactive enclosures with live plants, and now you're also you're trying to keep these plants alive, and you're creating the needs that the plants need, and this animal's in this enclosure, and similarities, they overlap. So it's kind of like you're saying, building an environment around the animal. So now you have a whole living like ecosystem versus just one thing in a little glass cage up on the shelf type deal.
Yeah. Bioactive is actually an interesting thing, and in the chameleon community we have to separate. Naturalistic is okay, we've got live plants. Bioactive is where we have a substrate with living things, your cleanup crew and stuff in the substrate. And chameleons themselves, you don't need a substrate. You don't need all that stuff down there. But in fact, it just complicates things. But if you do have that there, then, and I absolutely encourage it, because if you are having that naturalistic and the bioactive, you are forced to care about the environment. I mean, the little environment within the cage, and you are thinking about it from an environment. I am maintaining an environment, and so it gets us in the right mindset. So it's a useful trend.
Awesome. Yeah, I recently just doing my first bioactive, so we're trying. Nick and Gabe both they have experience with bioactive, definitely more so than me.
So I had chameleons though.
Well, yeah. But I got a 2x2x4 from a local guy here, and this was even before I got the Panther. And I was like, okay, how can I make this an ecosystem? Even before I 100% dedicated it to a specific animal. So I took inside measurements of the enclosure. I went to my local Ace Hardware, got glass cut, sealed the glass all up, water tested it. So, I've got my little bioactive going on there, the drainage layer, all the good stuff that comes with bioactive, isopods and whatnot. And it's rewarding to see. I mean, when you look at your animal in this enclosure, and you got the live plants and the dew, and your soil's alive, and a leaf litter, it's like a little slice of habitat. I don't know, it's awesome. It's very rewarding to see.
I agree.
And I'm loving it so far. Also, you had a great podcast about bioactivity.
Yeah.
We just me and Nick actually just listened to it the other day.
It was awesome. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I forget his name already, but yeah.
John Courtney Smith.
That's John Courtney Smith. Yep. Yeah, he was awesome. Extremely knowledgeable.
Yes.
So we had a couple of other questions in husbandry. You talked about okay, this is a good one. We'll go with this one. What is so you obviously, you said you sell a couple babies here and there, but mostly you're just keeping. And I mean, you may have already kind of answered this, but what's your motivation for to be moving towards just keeping, or have you just always been that way?
I'm sorry, ask that question again.
I'm sorry. Have you? Well, what was the motivation for moving towards just keeping, or have you pretty much just always been that way? You've never had like this mindset of producing and moving.
Oh, you mean being a breeder and
Sure. I mean, you are a breeder, obviously.
Oh yeah, yeah,
breed, but yeah.
Oh,
but like the guy that's at the reptile shows with a bunch of screen cages on the table and stuff. You just never wanted to go that way.
Well, that's been in my past. I've been a small time breeder. I actually had a large breeding facility that
Gotcha.
that covered acres, and so
Wow.
I've been through it, and I've done wholesale breeding, and so I've had all levels of being a breeder
Yeah.
of chameleons, and so I guess it just depends on where I am in my growth as an individual and where I want to be.
Yeah.
When you're a breeder, you develop different things than my path. I have chosen to push our husbandry forward, and my goal is to figure out the best way, the way to get our husbandry to the most naturalistic as possible, with the intention of finding the greatest longevity for our chameleons. That is completely different than the breeder mindset of raising the chameleons consistently, quickly, getting the best productivity, getting the best health, the initial health, and being able to do it in a simple enough way that your customers, who may be doing this for the first time, can reproduce your success. And so it's not that one is better than the other. We need both. We need me and the people like me pushing our husbandry forward so we learn more things. We need the breeders and the breeders shouldn't be changing. All this thing I said about hydration and the things we're learning about UVB. The breeders who have their systems set up so it is running like clockwork, they shouldn't change things, because if you've been doing something that works for 10 years and your customers are able to reproduce that and be successful with their chameleons, don't change that. That's working. Let them start off like that. And if they want to progress, well, then they can start listening to Chameleon Academy and start thinking about different ways, because then they're starting to get into my track where we're thinking, okay, what's the longevity? So this all works when there are different stages of discovery, shall we say. And I'm not on the frontier. I'm actually one step back from the frontier. There are people who have come up with crazy ideas, and I don't start talking, and they talk about, we're doing all this crazy stuff that no one's ever done before, and you all don't know what you're talking about. This is the new way. That's great. I need to test it, not only with myself and in my collection for a while, like at least 6 months, maybe a year, but also I got to work with, how can I communicate this to other people? And so I don't start talking about it, and it's not on my care summaries until I, number one, prove it myself, and I know that I can communicate it in a way that other people can reproduce it. And so that's where I am. So I'm one step back. And then another step back for me is the general social media community that just takes a while for them to.
Yeah, whole podcast on social media. It's a jungle out there, so to speak. Sometimes, man, you see some crazy stuff. A quick question for you, Bill, from the chat. Our recurring guest, Jennifer.
Oh, okay. So contacted by special needs newborn Jackson's chameleon. It may be blind or low vision. Should I go for a long enclosure versus high? That would depend on how well it can navigate the branches and how well it can find food. And so if it can't navigate branches very well, don't give it a whole lot of options. If it can't find food, well, then you need an enclosure where you can work with it and help it. It all depends on how well they can do chameleon life. I've had chameleons that are blind, and they just sit around, and they learn to eat when you tap their mouth with a cricket. They open their mouth, you put it in, and it can go on this way. Now, there's a huge challenge having a baby. Jackson's chameleon, so that's a small chameleon, and it's not big enough to have a whole lot of life experience. So there's a challenge there.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty.
Yeah, I would need to know a lot more about the individual situation.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Beyond that.
Definitely.
Absolutely. So what you got, bro?
Yeah, so
I had a chameleon that couldn't use its that couldn't use its eyes, and I had a chameleon couldn't use its tongue, and it's amazing how well handicapped chameleons can adjust and have a long life. So it's not a lost cause at all.
Well, that's
definitely
good to know.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's good to know too, because you never want to see,
Yeah, you got to make a decision. Are they suffering, or are they just because if they are newborn and there's something wrong with their eyesight, there's something that went on in the nutrition, and this may be a baby that didn't get everything that it needed to, and so we need to keep that in mind and not breed this baby. We don't know if it's genetic or if it's just they didn't get as many nutrients. So it's going to be a nice pet for as long as there's nothing wrong internally.
Yeah. Systemically and all that good stuff. So you're a huge proponent of community outreach. What platforms are most successful disseminating valuable information to the rest of the community, in your opinion?
Oh, well, any platform that you have is a good platform for communication, because every platform has a different audience. Yes, there's crossover, but I know the Instagram people, they don't necessarily want to hop to YouTube, and YouTube people, they really want to go on TikTok. TikTok people, they want to go on Facebook. Nobody wants to go on Facebook. So it's like going backwards. But the Facebook people, they like Facebook, and are they going on TikTok? And so all of these platforms are their own communities, and so every one of those communities needs people to dedicate their time there. And so just if you want to do communicate education, what platform do you like? Go ahead and make it your home.
Preferred platform, definitely.
Yeah, make it your home.
Yeah, that's a great answer.
Yep, for sure.
So we are in the early stages of our content creation life, so to speak. You've been at it for quite some time. What kind of role do content creators, well-educated and reputable content creators, what role do they play in the what am I trying to say here?
In building up the
community growth.
Yeah, community growth, even advancements in husbandry, general care, all that stuff.
That is going to depend on you personally, and the person who is in charge of the creation, what their priorities are. Me personally, I am in this for my personal growth, and I want to refine the husbandry to see how we can keep chameleons alive the longest. Longevity, that's my definition of good husbandry. And all of my outreach is just me bringing the community with me in my journey and my exploration. And so I don't have the platforms that I've created, so I can spread the message of Bill. If you decide that that's what you want, is to spread your own message, and there are people, yes, this is not me being sarcastic. There are people who decide that they want to be the head of things, and they want to spread the message of them. How am I guess I'm dancing around. Coming right out.
I would just say
I'm picking up what you're putting down for sure.
Yeah, if you want to be the god of your particular community, and you want to talk about how great you are in all of your knowledge, then you are going to have that kind of outreach, and you are going to collect followers who are truly followers. And so, do you want to collect followers, or do you want to collect people that you are going to empower to become leaders? And there's a huge difference in your approach, and you just decide who you are. Or maybe you're just having fun, you're just going to sit down and have fun. I don't know that. I mean, is any one of those better than the other? I don't know. I think our community could deal with all of these. I mean, people, honestly, I of course believe my way is the best way, because that's what I'm doing. But I can tell you, my way doesn't work for a lot of people. Coming to my outreach, my Chameleon Academy, look at my website, my podcast. You ask me a question, and just like that baby cage question, you're gonna get this onslaught of all of this. Well, this is what you got to think of, and well, it's I can't give you the inches. You got to think a lot if you ask me a question, because I'm going to give you all the things for you to understand, and for you to make the decision. If that's not your style, you just want a simple answer, well, then maybe the guy who wants to just be the
tell you things
and just tell you things, maybe that's more your style. And as much as, the way I say it makes it seem like that's a lesser decision, those people need help too. Yeah. And so those people are going to gravitate to the ones that are more of the leader looking for followers. The people who want to learn themselves will gravitate towards me. And, we all have our own style, and the people who need that will gravitate. I mean,
definitely. I think it goes
we're
back
all effective in our own way.
Definitely. Yeah, I think it goes back to the old adage, give a man a fish, he eats for a day, teach a man to fish, eat for life type deal. Do you want to know something right now, or do you want to be, be knowledgeable enough to make your own decisions and handle these things and actually, learn, and you know what I mean? It's
yes, there is value in being told what to do, because when people start off, they have no idea. And when this is a problem I personally have, when people who just start off talk to me and ask me what UVB they should have, they're going to, within 5 seconds, be shell shocked. They all of a sudden, I've used 2 words that they don't know. UV index, what the heck's that? They want to be told what to do. And so at that very basic level, they need to be told what to do. And I've had to accept that that's not my place. That's not, I try and I do make things as simple as possible, but I've had to accept that that's not my place. There's other people who will do that better than me. I have to be at the level, once they've got things set up and they're starting to ask questions and they know what questions to ask. That's where my place in the community comes in. So, it's I am the way I am because that's the way I want to be, but I can't fulfill the entire community's needs, and I'm certainly, at least in our incarnation of Bill, I'm not going to be able to give you TikTok videos. I don't know. Maybe
even the 3 minutes is probably not enough, right?
Being able to, gosh, you got, you know what? I'm so glad we've got Neptune the Chameleon, because she takes care of that sort of thing that that's the limit that at least at this point, that's my limit. I may try to do like lip sync and stuff. But maybe I'm okay with my limits.
Speaking of lip sync, Gabe, what is that? What you want to ask him? Something about?
No, man. So I listened to a few of your podcasts, Was it mainly in 2020? A couple of them were for 2020, and I was just curious, what was your favorite Disney metal cover song?
Oh goodness!
Because
he asked us that the other night. He said, "I want to ask him this question," and we were like, "What? Why?"
That's as good as the Dexter Chameleon House question.
Well, I specifically like the Let It Go cover.
Oh, that's my favorite. That's the German guy, favorite. Right?
Nice. Yeah.
Oh man,
the German guy. Yeah.
I forget what his name
won't
is.
admit to, but he loves that song.
I love the metal cover of it.
Yeah, I've heard it.
Anybody who doesn't know what we're talking about, for whatever reason, I started talking about the on YouTube. I found this. Some guy did a heavy metal cover of "Let It Go" from
Frozen.
Oh yeah, it's great.
That's it. Oh, I loved it. I loved it.
It is pretty cool.
I think that was during the when we were first doing the pandemic lockdowns, and so I decided I'm going to do a podcast a day and just
that was awesome.
Reach out.
Reach out. Absolutely.
Yeah, that
Very
was a lot
cool.
of fun.
Do a little more of that every day. That would be great.
Yeah, sure. Oh, well, you talk about my personal growth. The one problem I've had is YouTube. I mean, what we're on right now. I have been trying to get my YouTube channel to be consistent for 3 years now. You can go back and you can see when I said, okay, I'm going to do a podcast and a YouTube video. And I got through 2 episodes like that. And it was just, I just couldn't keep it up. And then I came up with another great YouTube video at the end of that year, or whatever. So and I did a lot more this year. So I'm getting there. But I decided my personal growth, I'm going to do a YouTube video a day. And so I did the 12 days of Christmas gift giving.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And I made no scripts. I mean, that's the big thing about me. I need scripts, but I've been working on doing it with no scripts. And that's my personal growth in my art as a podcaster / video dude.
And actually speaking on that video podcast, going from audio and video, if you don't mind hanging out just for a few minutes after the episode, we'd actually like to pick your brain on some of that with your experience with both platforms.
Time.
That if you have time, of course.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
But speaking
we usually hang out for a few minutes.
Oh yeah, we love to hang out and kind of talk about the episode and whatnot. But speaking on your advancements in husbandry, specifically chameleons, obviously, and your entrepreneurial side, we know you're an entrepreneur. You got your the Reptile Entrepreneur podcast, amazing podcast. We love it.
I love it.
Take us through a little bit of the whole Dragon Strand venture, and you seeing the need for this in husbandry and in captive husbandry, and how that became a business venture.
Dragon Strand came up because of these advancements in chameleon husbandry. The need for more humidity control, and I only knew a quarter of what I know now as to how important it is, but the solid sides, the hybrid cage, that was new to the chameleon community. You go back in 2013 when I started Dragon Strand, and it was screen cage only, and you go to so many people now, and it's still screen cage only. So it's like we haven't moved too far. But when you have solid side cages, you're able to control the internal environment so much better. And with this increased awareness of the importance of humidity, this is important. And so the thing is, I'm talking about these things, and I'm talking about individually raised babies. Back then, that was 8 years ago. I was talking about how important it is to have individually raised babies. But I can talk about all this, but if there's no products out there for people to use that they're able to implement all these things, then it just doesn't, I'm just spewing into the wind. And so I happened to meet up with a manufacturer, a guy who makes chameleon cage. He would make screen cages. And I talked to him about some of these ideas, and I got a whole earful about all the things that I wanted that wouldn't work. but we were able to come up with a nursery cage system and a hybrid cage system that he could make. And so that's how it started. It really came from the need for me to make it happen so people could do what I was
what you were saying to do. Yeah.
And it really came from that.
I gotcha. Yeah, I mean, and that's I've noticed that seems to be the common theme on the entrepreneur podcast for sure. Yeah. Somebody sees a need because they do this. This is their life. They're taking care of this species day in and day out, and they're like, we need this thing, And I've listened to a couple of the ones with the guys who do various 3D printing, which is just amazing, really cool. So yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, and that's really what I was trying to do with the Reptile Entrepreneur podcast, is to help these inventors, these innovators and entrepreneurs within our niche communities, empower them to become business owners, get those products out there, because we're having this incredible growth in the reptile community.
Excuse me.
And somebody is going to capitalize on that. And I got to tell you, the Chinese companies and these larger companies who see an opportunity to sell gadgets, they don't care about our community. They're not going to be the ones who are supporting USARK. Yes, I mean, ZoomEd does. I mean, Josh's Frogs. I mean, companies at that level, those are useful to our community. They came from within our community. But if you start getting like National Geographic putting their name on cheap Chinese stuff and selling it in Petco, they're not going to be part of the community. And they're not going to support us when we need help. They're not going to be. And so by encouraging innovators and entrepreneurs within these niche communities, we can start building the foundation of business within our community, coming within our community, and our dollars can be recycling within the community. And as any of these innovators know, they get a 3D printer machine and they create a product. There's so much more to business than creating a product. There's the marketing. There's the putting together a website. There's having to understand where on social media to go and how to function with all of this. How do you do shipping? What's an LLC? And so how do you do patents, trademarks? And all of these kind of things are what I want to talk about and bring out in the podcast. And so I can be a resource. So these people who don't know how to do anything beyond they've invented a product, they can go here and they say, okay, I don't have to do a website. I can sell on Etsy. And they do everything for me. Maybe in a year, I want to do a website. Well, I'm going to help you get on Etsy and I'm going to help you do a website. And so I want to provide all these resources so they have them available and so they can be successful at whatever stage they are.
Yeah,
that's
just
awesome.
Empowering.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Excuse me. I took the tiniest sip of water and it has got me all messed up. Like, this is what we get when we go live, right?
That's what you get for doing that, man.
Yep.
The tiniest sip of water.
It was so tiny. There was barely anything left in this cup. I was just like, I just want that. And then it apparently I took it into my lungs directly or something.
So we're talking about Dragon Strand. When this was in its infancy, did you create the first prototypes yourself, or you had your design, you knew what you wanted, you knew how you wanted it? Did you reach out to somebody to fabricate the product for you? How'd that start out? How'd that go? Bringing it to life. So to speak.
Do, like for the Dragon Ledges, I do create prototypes, but when it comes from the cage and the cage dimensions and stuff, I design it, and I don't necessarily say, okay, this is how. I don't design the pieces. I say, this is the end product that I want. So I'm more from a marketing side. This is what I want to accomplish with this product. These are the basic dimensions that I need. And then I give it to my manufacturer and he figures out how to do it. This is the guy that, if you remember the Triple L cages, you guys are in the community. Way back, we had this is the guy who did the most developing of chameleon cages within the community. It's his cage that ZooMed, they grabbed one of his cages, sent it over to China, and said, replicate this. So he's got 15 years of experience doing this, and that's a lot better than me going out and trying to figure out how to. I've tried to screen. I don't screen that well. I'm still learning how to screen.
Screening's fun, man. Screening's fun.
Yeah, maybe, but if you get it too tight, then you get these warpings and stuff. So, yeah, I'm going to get somebody who really knows what they're doing.
Yeah,
definitely.
I'll do the marketing and I'll design it, and yeah, I'll let them manufacture it.
That was a smart choice for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely know my limits when it comes to making stuff.
Yeah, and I can be. I do. My time is much better spent putting together content than it is cutting aluminum framing. We all have our place.
Yes.
And I know my guys down there doing this cage, they don't want to have anything to do with what I do. They have no interest in being online and doing all this crazy stuff. So we fit in well.
Awesome. Yeah.
Nice.
That's Gabe right there. He can build with the best of them.
All right, Gabe.
Great fabricator. As you can see behind him, there's only a few pre-made enclosures. Everything else is made by hand. It's good stuff, honestly.
Yeah, and I have a very strange position to where I encourage people to make their own cage, and really, you don't come and you buy a cage from me because you don't know how to build a cage. It's because you don't want to spend the time doing it or buying the tools or all that. I mean,
right. You want something that's, take it out, put it together.
There's no cage. We can go on the internet right now and find plans for every type of cage. And you get one of my cages. It's not like it's rocket science. Now, I will say there's enormous skill that goes into making it look nice and doing it well and having those holes all line up. And so there's an enormous amount of skill in doing more than one and making them clean. So I'm not going to say it's simple to do it, because every year I have had 1 to 2, every year since I've started, I have had 1 to 2 competitors rise out of nowhere, decide that they're going to take over the caging industry, and then they disappear when they find out, it's simple to make one, but that's not what a business is built off of. Yeah.
Production.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Oh my goodness, there's so much that goes into it, and it's not simple, especially in nowadays. There are so many things. There are shortages all over, and there's a lot going on right now that's making life difficult.
Oh yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah, we see that a lot in the automotive business. Just any kind of bulk material is extremely hard to get. And if you can get it, it's expensive. Mm-hmm. And if you're trying to get something that's comprised of these bulk materials, good luck.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Yeah, there was a time at the beginning of the pandemic, I actually had to delay my introduction of my hybrid cage with an acrylic front, because all of the acrylic was going to making these acrylic shields for retail locations. And so, I mean, that's just what happens.
Oh, man.
Yep. Awesome. Good stuff.
Yes, very good. So where do you want to move to there, bro?
Oh, future hobby.
Yeah, that's probably a good place to go to. We're gonna talk about the future of the hobby. So we have a question. It's worded this way: you're a proponent of continued learning and evolution as a keeper. Yeah. So where do you see yourself going forward?
I am going to continue doing what I am doing. There is so much more to discover. There are so many more things that I want to know personally. And I actually have specific things on my list of things I want to understand and experiment with. And
is that something you can share, or those
secrets? Well, the first one is the understanding of the relationship between vitamin A and vitamin D3. They are said to be antagonistic, but what does that mean? And And where I'm concerned is not just knowing in a scientific way how that what their relationship is, but in a husbandry way. And this is where I got to explain the distinction between a scientific paper where they are able to, like there's studies as to how much D3 a chameleon needs, and what their response to a UVB light is, depending upon how much D3 they have or how much vitamin A chameleon needs. When you're in a scientific arena, laboratory, you are wiping away all of the other parameters, and so you can isolate this D3. You're giving the chameleon D3 or vitamin A through a syringe, so you know exactly how much they're getting every time. Well, that's great information, but us in the husbandry world, we can't do that. And if we know that the chameleons need this much vitamin D3 to take the place of UVB, well, that's an interesting a little piece of information. But how do we actually recreate that? Can you do that? I mean, I took this. Some guy talked about Dr. Ferguson talked about a colleague of his who figured out, and I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head, how much vitamin D3 a chameleon needs to take the place of the UVB exposure. Okay. And then I did all my calculation and I found out, hey, that is very similar to how much vitamin D3 is in Repashy Calcium Plus if you give it every other day. And so, hey, we found a nice correlation, right? Kind of, maybe we have a possible idea. But Repashy Calcium Plus also has vitamin A in it. And if vitamin A and vitamin D3 are antagonistic, what does that mean for the effectiveness of vitamin D3 or the effectiveness of vitamin A? And so this is an area where I would like to have a better understanding of what's going on with those two fat-soluble vitamins. And in the chameleon world, fat-soluble vitamins are very important because we end up with edema or else overdose if we don't understand it correctly. So that's a personal growth area of mine. I'd like to understand that.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I mean, I'm getting the sense that the things that you're trying that you want to understand further or seem to line up with health of the animals. The what am I trying to say here? Like you said earlier, longevity.
Yeah. Well, and also it's we have so much. We have decisions to make as far as supplementation, and so if we understand how effective the vitamin D is within our supplements, we understand how effective the UVB is, then we can intelligently figure out a husbandry routine. I mean, everything we do is a compromise. It's a shadow of what they get in the wild, or it's in like our supplementation is like everything thrown at them at once. And so how healthy is that? It's working at this point, but you go back and I got to tell you, this is one of the greatest episodes of my the podcast is when I interviewed Jeff Hattem, who it was like a time capsule. This guy was part of a multi-generational Jackson's chameleon breeding project a year before I was born. And there were no supplementations back then, no calcium. And they went, I think it was 3 generations, if I remember correctly. So this tells me that we don't need everything. The chameleons don't need everything we're giving them. But what do they need and what don't they need? I don't know. So, we're going to give them everything if they can handle it, just so we make sure they get what they need. There's so much that we don't know about that big. I mean, it's like we took everything, we just threw it up against a wall and said, okay, there it is. But there's so much more. And just going back to that podcast episode, that episode just made me realize how valuable those of us creating digital footprints are, because there is no record of that multi-generational breeding project anywhere. There's no doubt. That was what, 67? That was before any internet. It wasn't filmed, and any notes, the people who are in charge of it are no longer with us. The notes are lost, who knows where. And so it was actually that interview that I realized what I had here. It was a record that if I didn't do that interview, all that information would have been lost. I didn't realize that things were that things like that, projects like that, were being done so early.
Okay.
And it just really moved back my timeline as to my understanding of chameleons in the United States. And so it was just an amazing realization. And it really opened my mind to not only how things were different back then, with no supplementation, no calcium, just some teenager running around front yards collecting insects, because there was no crickets commercially available either. So that's what you had to do.
Just a question that I have. Would you say that by feeding like more of a variety of like insects and stuff like that, that you wouldn't need as much supplementation?
She's talking specifically about gut loading too.
Yeah, no, that was Gabe's question, but it actually lined up with hers pretty closely.
Oh, I thought Gabe
Yeah,
put
they
it on the
basically
screen.
had. I put it on the screen, but it was as he was speaking. I was like, well, they're identical almost. So that's a twofer.
I believe it will. One day, I believe we will be able to feed our chameleons without supplementation.
Yeah.
And since supplementation is working right now, it's going to take a lot of evaluation and understanding what we're doing before we start taking away from something that's working, because every time we do that, we break something that's working. But
yeah, I guess it would be difficult to see what the nutritional value of like a dubia roach is. Or
but if you look at what we're learning is that I think it was dubia roaches. There's other insects that produce D3 if they're exposed to UVB light. Well, that's an interesting thing. Grasshoppers, a diurnal feeder, are being now bred, and so I can't predict, but I believe that it is very possible that as we replace our nocturnal feeder insects with diurnal feeder insects, and we're getting a much better understanding about UVB in the community, that we're going to find that we can do with less and less supplementation. And I mean, honestly, my care summaries all have a multivitamin included, because it's every 2 weeks. It was just that's the industry standard. Let's just go with it. But really, my experimentation was with something that had mainly calcium, bee pollen. I didn't give a multivitamin to my entire collection for 1 to 2 years. And there was no vitamin A deficiency.
Well, yeah, I don't imagine the chameleons are getting calcium-dusted crickets in the wild.
Yeah. and that's what I was going to say.
No, but
I would love to tell everybody that you don't need a multivitamin. But the fact is that other people in the community, if they don't use the multivitamin, they find a vitamin A deficiency.
Yeah.
So that's why all my care summaries have a multivitamin in it, even though I raised chameleons, and I have other breeders who have their entire breeding projects. I mean, huge breeding projects, no multivitamin, just calcium and bee pollen.
Wow.
Yeah.
But we can't say that. We can't move that out into the community until we are sure that everybody in the community that is listening to us can reproduce our results.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you why I didn't have a vitamin A deficiency. Was it because I gut loaded with sweet potatoes? I don't know. And so these are things that I need to know. I need to know why I didn't get that deficiency before I tell everybody that you don't need a multivitamin.
Yeah. Okay.
These are things that need to be explored. I don't know why that super breeder who has bred so many rare chameleons just uses calcium and B pollen. Why does that work and he never gets vitamin A deficiency? I don't have an answer for that. Until I have an answer for that, have to include a multivitamin. So we can start taking things off as soon as we get those answers. And everybody who listens to us can recreate it. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely. That's
the stuff I love right there. You're really doing science. I mean, honestly, that's all it is. Yeah.
This is the wonderful thing about having a podcast, is because I'm able to talk to those people and get in depth and have in-depth conversations with very experienced people who just don't feel like joining the chaos on Facebook and having to do everything you have to do in a forum type environment.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and
sure
and
too,
it may sound every now and then it may sound like, well, not more than every now and then that I'm sitting here and harshing on Facebook, but Facebook is a very important component to our community. It is the front lines. Our front lines are slowly shifting to TikTok. So, things are changing whether we like it or not. But it is an environment that is not conducive to bringing out information that experienced people have.
Yeah.
And the podcast allows that. And it's amazing the kind of things I've learned because I've been able to just sit and have a conversation with people.
Yeah, and two, I'm sure you're probably forming questions as you're having these conversations as well. Maybe stuff that maybe didn't come up in your own mind, but you listen to what they are doing and their experience, and you're like, I wonder why that is. This is something we can find
it's
out
been happening
if we go about it the right way,
Yeah,
I think that's been happening to us all night.
Taking all these different perspectives and all these different ideas, adding your own, adding the ideas and perspectives of your last guest and pulling it all together. And that's what's so incredible about this type of outreach.
For sure.
All right.
For sure.
Awesome. Well,
yeah. Thoroughly. Speaking of questions that get sparked throughout conversation, you were speaking of a vitamin A deficiency. How does that present in a chameleon? What do you notice? What does that look like?
Generally problems with the eyes, and the eyes start closing. And when a chameleon closes its eyes, that's the sign that something's wrong. And unfortunately, it's a universal sign that can mean just about anything, because when a chameleon closes its eyes, there's something internal going on. And so that is the easiest sign, is the eyes. It's very difficult for them to open their eyes.
Okay. Yeah. I've noticed actually with my veiled chameleon versus the juvenile panther I have, her tongue, it seems off to me. I know, theoretically they can protrude twice their body length, I believe is the spec on that. But it seems at a certain distance she like loses her. It's out and then it just is down, and it's like she doesn't have that force I've noticed with some other ones. Could that even be a sign of anything, or is
it could be? It could be a sign of vitamin deficiency or overdose, or just some imbalance going on in there. There are in what you're describing, it sounds like there's some imbalance in there. Of course, there's physical trauma that can happen in both the eyes and the tongue, and you got to consider that. It could be that, like in a tongue, you can easily sprain the muscle. Say they shoot at a locust or a hornworm that really has a grip and fights when the chameleon tries to pull it back, and they can hurt themselves. It's the same way if you hold something and they hit it and you don't let go of it, it may throw something off in their muscles. And so there's so many things. The eyes, the tongue is such a complex system that it's very easy for something to go wrong. And what's really important for us when we're evaluating that is to consider all the options. It's very easy for people to say, oh, tongue problem, well, there's a vitamin overdose, or eye problem, it's vitamin A deficiency. We really got to ask the questions to find the smoking gun, essentially. Find the smoking gun. You think it's a deficiency? Well, go into the supplementation. Have they had vitamin A? And sometimes it gets very difficult to ferret out what the problem could be. And especially when you're doing it over social media, not only does the person you're talking to, they may not know how to answer it. They also may be trying to, nobody wants to be blamed for anything. So
of course,
maybe hedging the answers that they give you, and they may give you the answer that you are looking for if you give them any hint as to what to look for. Because if they tell you what you want to hear, then okay, now we have a solution. And
definitely easier to receive information you want.
Having a solution that is wrong is comforting, but it's still wrong solution. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yep.
All right.
So
this has been quite the cast so far.
Yeah?
An hour and a half already. Wow.
Yeah, it's gone really fast. So another question that we had, is there anything like up and coming in advancements in chameleon care or husbandry that has you extremely excited for the future? Anything that you know of, other than obviously just learning more and all that stuff?
At this point, it's the things that we are learning more and more about is in the hydration, the UVB, and the supplementation. With the hydration, I am excited about figuring out how to make the nighttime hydration, what I call the naturalistic hydration, able to be communicated in a way that the standard, the mainstream community can implement it and implement it correctly. And it's a little bit complicated, and I always have a dripper there, say at 3 p.m., have your dripper and see does the chameleon go for it as a test. But and like I said, I revise my care summaries every year, and it's not that the care changes, it's that I take the feedback for how people interpret what I've written. And that tells me, do I need to change what's written? Like my UVB, I started off giving this very complex formula of how far up off of the cage the UVB needs to be and how far down below the top of the cage the basking branch needs to be. And that just confused everybody. People would look at that, they'd say, forget it. I'm just going to go with whatever the person tells me the easiest is. And I realized, okay, that this isn't working. So then I went to a system where I say, okay, have the UVB directly on top of the cage. Yeah, you're going to get 2 inches if you go with the 6%, 2 inches of very high UVB. But if it's an adult, the adult's not going to be hanging from the top of the cage. That's a compromise. And after spending a year and a half with that compromise, I don't like it. So I am now working on adding my 2 inches above the cage, and then the amount of space below the cage top back into my care summaries. And so I'm going to try to, it's always a back and forth, but the care actually hasn't changed. So the hydration, I just need to explain it better. The UVB, I need to explain it better. The question as to whether we need UVB on for 12 hours a day is an interesting one. And there's arguments on both sides. Then we talk about UVB dosing. It's an interesting thing to explore now. And then supplementation, as that question, I would love to see us go to the next step where we just have calcium and bee pollen. What does it take so everybody does that? Because I truly believe that we're giving more than we need to, and who knows what it's doing to their insides and what it's when you keep giving them more than they need, and even giving it every other week, every 2 weeks. That I don't know. I think it's safe. It's been proven safe, but well, as
There's
much
always a risk.
prove anything. But is it really? Because we give so much, so this combination of everything, and so I would love to see us reduce the amount of supplementation we give.
Yeah.
So that's an advancement, and I am excited about having more diurnal feeder insects available to us. We got black soldier flies; those are diurnal. The grasshoppers, those are diurnal. So I
know they're. It seems like they're like a big staple and have been for a while in the UK and maybe in other parts of Europe. But are they becoming more common here in the US?
We have one guy who has been able to breed them and has been able to get permits to ship into states. The reason why it's difficult here in the States is because regulations. We have a lot of agriculture, and we don't want to be.
You don't want grasshoppers eating everything. Yeah.
So
they will.
But it's been possible. This guy has gone from state to state, and actually, it's Kai Fan. I interviewed him on the Reptile Entrepreneur.
Oh, okay.
And he has he's got to go each and every state, and each and every state will say, okay, you can do this species, but not this species, or nothing, or everything. And so it's just different.
Gotcha.
And so we've got one guy who is dedicated to working out that particular issue.
That's awesome.
Nice. Yeah, that's great.
Right.
Just a sort of a side question. I'm just curious. I don't obviously do chameleons, but the nighttime hydration, are you getting that through a standard misting system, or are you actually doing a fogger?
I'm using a fogger with that.
Fogger.
I actually use a combination of mister and the fogger.
Okay.
The one thing about a mister is it's just pressurized water going out.
Yeah.
And chameleons hate being sprayed on.
Yeah.
And so,
but that fog, I would think, would more accurately simulate what's going to happen at night.
Yeah, it's more of a natural humidity cycle.
Yeah, although our implementation of a fogger, of having these little tubes that just do a little like a stream, that's cone of fog coming out, that's not. We have a lot. We have a lot to go as far as doing an effective fogging for our chameleon setups. And I'd love to see the Reptile Entrepreneur. I'd like to interview somebody on a Reptile Entrepreneur podcast
who's working on that.
I mean, I've thought about. I mean, I'm working on it, but I'm sure there's somebody else who's working on it a lot more than I am.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's got me thinking actually about my New Caledonian geckos, and I typically will do the maintenance, later in the evening, clean everybody, spray everybody, feed everybody, all that stuff, because they're nocturnal. And I wonder, how much of their hydrate, they're obviously nocturnal, so they're drinking and they're eating at night primarily. Yeah. So I wonder if doing the same type of thing for them, if I would see,
I think so. I think this is going to be, we're going to see this across a lot of reptiles. Give me a second. I'm going to close the door.
Oh, sure.
All right. So and the things we're learning in the chameleon community are definitely going to be able to be used in other communities. I mean, arboreal reptiles have the problem that they don't have a ready supply of drink water. They don't have cups of water sitting in the trees.
Yeah. I mean, I give all of my geckos a water dish, and I think I've seen one gecko in the past 4 years drink out of one. I don't know if anybody else is. Obviously, I can't be sure because I'm not watching them 24/7. But yeah, I do it anyway because I feel like it's better than
I know.
have it than not.
Abronia, they have bromeliads that collect water, so maybe
Sure, yeah.
So everyone has their own little ecosystem and way that they can get water. But I know with chameleons, they don't have cups of water.
No, yeah.
So they have to figure it out some other way.
Absolutely not.
Well, definitely.
So, are we?
I think we're actually out of questions.
Yeah, we're about out of the questions that we sort of pre-put together. We've definitely gone into some other segues, which was really nice. And that's usually how these things go, so we like it that way.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
We're still getting the hang of this, so.
Well, you guys got to see my my Australian pitcher plant.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You guys do anything with carnivorous plants?
So I have a guy who I go to grad school with here who specializes in them, but past that, I don't do anything with them. He actually
I enjoyed them.
Yeah.
I know, beautiful.
Well, you got to see my cephalotus. That's my Australian pitcher plant. Let's see. There we go.
That's cool.
Man, I love pitcher plant.
Yeah, those are awesome.
There we go. There we go. Oh, I love that guy so much.
Gorgeous.
Yeah, that's really cool.
So
that is awesome.
My guy here, he actually did his thesis work on the relationship or possible relationship between green tree frogs and I can't remember the exact species of pitcher plant that he was working with, but maybe Sarracenia.
Yeah, they're talking about a U.S. frog.
Yeah, it's a
Sarracenia.
US frog. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I just have to remember what he said because I thought it was cool that he had the frogs.
Yeah.
But yeah, that thing is awesome. That's really cool.
So, well, let me turn this around and ask, what do you guys hope to get out of this video podcast of yours?
That's a good question. We I started this YouTube channel a while back, and then I didn't post anything for a really long time, and then I started posting videos, and they got some likes and stuff, and I was like, okay, I can keep doing this. And I was thinking, I would post some stuff for that has to do with geckos and what I do in my captive collection, and then I like to field herp, so I've put some of those videos out as well. But me and Gabe had started talking about maybe trying to do a podcast where we just generally talk about different reptile topics and maybe talk to people within the community too, try to get people on, which is what we're doing now, which is awesome. And then it just sort of morphed into trying to put it on the YouTube channel. So yeah, this going forward, we definitely want to keep this going. And after listening to some of your stuff, especially with the guy from Animals at Home, I don't recall his name right off the top of my head, but Dylan Perrin, he he really got me thinking about like trying to figure out exactly what we want this to be, like what's our focus, because right now we're kind of all over the place. These interviews are good and they go pretty much the same way. We go along the same lines with people and try to dig into what they're doing in their part of the hobby, and I think there's still a place for that, even though a lot of other podcasts do it. I don't see why we can't do that too. But to fill in the space, we definitely need to try and hone our focus, because right now we're grasping at straws for topics and things like that when we're not having people on. And we're still new to trying to get people on. So we definitely appreciate you being so gracious and coming on this brand new podcast for sure.
Extremely new.
It's so important to have, I view, especially from my reptile entrepreneur background, it is so important to have more and more of these content streams, because like I said, when you bring on people, once you find what you want to accomplish, what really speaks to you, and you start to focus in on that and bring people in to build up your understanding of whatever it is and your effectiveness in it, you are going to become the leaders in that. I mean, maybe not the leaders within that. I mean, this, me being able to be on the forefront of chameleon husbandry is not because I'm some magical being out of The Hobbit. It's because I talk to people. For 6 years now. I'm in the 6th season. For the 6 seasons, I've been talking to people every week and taking in all these different perspectives. And so you become, you gather all of this information. And so having, and I'll say something, I'm going to be getting into a dart frog. I've wanted dart frogs. I'm going to get one. And who did I go to?
Oh, no,
I went to Dan Gervais of the Amphibicast.
Nice.
Because he's a podcaster. And I know a podcaster is talking to a lot of different people and is reconciling all these different views and opinions. He has to. He has to somehow acknowledge all these conflicting views and figure out what's the commonality, what is the use of all of this. And so I went to a podcaster because I know he has access to all the different views, and he's come up with some sort of way that it all fits.
And that's
what I definitely feel as we are maturing and progressing along with this podcast, I feel myself more and more wanting to host a variety of guests to gain the knowledge, because while we all have our areas that we really love, or that animal that does it for us, just having knowledgeable people on and being able to have access to that information and learn more about a variety of animals is I thoroughly enjoy it. I'm having fun learning more and more and more.
I not to be unoriginal, but I've just listened to one of your things earlier, and I think you said it extremely well in that it's the whole don't try to be something you're not type of thing that you talked about. And I've been doing this a long time too, not nearly as long as you, but I've been doing it a long time. But I've done different things, but I've only just in the last 4 years or so sort of found what I'm going to call my niche. So I definitely don't feel, and that was one of the things I thought about when I started the channel, is I don't necessarily feel like I'm the guy that should be making the content that says that this is how you do it. You know what I mean? This is 100% how you keep a crested gecko, a gargoyle gecko, a chihuahua gecko, whatever. So I see this being a really good opportunity in this podcast format to get a lot of really good information out there to people who are going to watch our channel without us having to be the ones that are necessarily delivering that information. And we've done a little bit of that, in some of the episodes without guests. And I try to never be the guy that's saying something that I'm not 100% confident in. I like to say I don't know, but so, we try to do some prep work before we do those episodes so that we can, easily recall what we do know. But I think that's really where we want to go with this.
Yeah,
and I think they would
really, with us as hosts, although I came with a wide body of knowledge to begin with, and I do individual episodes often, really our job as hosts is not to know everything. It's to facilitate the bringing of information to the audience. And so that's really my primary job, regardless of how much I know personally.
And that's definitely a skill that we just have to hone.
That's something that me and Nick have talked about, a couple times. For me, this is more about, having fun and advancing my husbandry, That's really what's important to me. And being able to speak with someone like you who has done so much for the chameleon community, and it's awesome for me. Like I was telling these guys, I didn't expect that I was going to get to talk to somebody who had done so much for their particular niche, whatever.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
It's awesome, and I don't know, it's just cool to get to learn from you and see the way that you think and stuff like that. So I guess that's kind of more for me what I'm looking to get. It's just knowledge and learn, and hopefully, other people that'll listen to this will learn just like I am, because at the end of the day, it's all about learning.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
Everything I know, it's just because I may be further down on the road, but we're all still on the same road.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
It's hard to think about, when you first started,
Yeah. But I want to say, everybody,
not knowing
if you're out there and you're thinking, I want to start a podcast, I want to help people, don't be intimidated. You can help people. There are people who, if you start on Monday, there are people who start on Wednesday. And as long as you're not trying to be more than you are, then there are people, and the more days you work, the more days you stick with it, and the more days you challenge yourself and learn, that's more people that are just starting off who can now benefit. And if nothing else, they can benefit from understanding your struggles in learning, because that's what they're going to go through. And you are there, you understand firsthand. And so you are able to help them. So as long as you understand what you are, you can have a show, you can help people, you can say, I don't know anything, but I want to know about seahorses, and so come along with me as I talk to all the experts, and you can have a really great show.
Right.
And just fight against the feeling that you need to present yourself as an expert if you're not. And I know many people have had this challenge. You have this incredible, they call it imposter syndrome. You're saying, why should I be doing this? I'm really not qualified for doing this, yet here I am. And they say, yeah, that's natural. But there is an aspect to where our community almost pressures you into doing that. If you step up and decide you're going to have a show, people start calling you an expert just because you have a video, just because you moderate a group, just because you've stepped up. All of a sudden they call you an expert. And this happens all over. I used to teach martial arts, and okay, I am here as a martial art teacher. People would come to me with life problems and think, okay, wait a minute. I know how to teach you martial arts. I can't help you with your life problems. I'm not a guru because I know martial arts.
Yeah.
And there are some, and we get that problem in the reptile community where you present yourself as knowing a whole lot about one thing. You know what? I'm going to be a podcaster, and I'm going to take you along with me as I learn about seahorses or varicoses, chameleons. And then all of a sudden people are calling you an expert. And just because you've got a video, nobody gave anybody a test before they could put together a video. And so you've got to be careful not to get into the trap of then trying to present yourself as an expert, because you don't want to disappoint your audience. Because it grows, and I see this grow. This isn't a hypothetical that I'm putting together. I literally see this happening with people that start off and they get caught up, and now I have to be an expert. And then that's when they start fighting and saying, no, what I know is right, is because they got caught up in feeling like they had to be an expert. And now they're having to defend being an expert, when it would be so much easier if you were okay just being who you are. I mean,
I don't know is 100% a viable answer.
It's like, hey guys, I'm not 100% sure, but this is the information that I found, and just putting it out there. Like,
there's nothing wrong with only having 6 months of experience.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I've got 40 some years of experience, but that's not as much as the guy I interviewed who was doing this a year before I was born.
Yeah.
So, but I'm not going to say I know more than him. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Yeah. All that matters is that I'm honest with what I know. And that way I can be comfortable in any setting where I'm talking about things, because I have no problem saying, I really don't know.
Right.
I mean,
but I'll find out.
And that's the important thing,
finding out. You may not know now, but you're going to find out.
And I got to say to anybody who wants to create a content stream, if you don't learn to say, I don't know, when you don't know, then all the people who do know, they now know that you don't know. And they now know that you're not going to be honest with what you know.
Yeah.
And sooner or later, the people who listen to you are going to hear from the people who are more experienced, and they're going to know that you don't know.
You don't know.
Yeah.
And they're
as complicated as that sounded, that was
it.
incredibly easy to follow.
So just be honest about where you are and be okay with that, because it's okay to have only 6 months of experience. You can make an incredible show as a 6-month experienced person. You can talk about the confusions that you're under. The greatest thing about social media is you don't have to be an expert. You just have to be you. And there are so many people out there. You will develop a community around who you are. And people who want to talk to an expert, okay, they won't listen to you. They won't follow you. But the people who would love to hear from somebody who's just like them is going to follow you and is going to love watching you as you grow. And if you are honest with who you are, and if you develop a community around you made up of people who understand who you are and want to follow you because of who you are, you never have to pretend, and you never have to be what you aren't. That is too great of a burden to take on. And just be who you are. You can be successful.
Definitely.
This
is
thank you.
This has been quite the podcast. We're here at the 2-hour mark, and it's been extremely informative. So we're gonna try a new thing where we do like a sign-off question, and we haven't agreed on this yet. Actually, I'm kind of playing this on the fly here.
But I wanted to read you my book.
Read the whole thing, because we got time.
Yeah.
So for tonight's sign-off question, what is your favorite species of chameleon? Just your favorite, prettiest, however you. Yeah.
Can you pick one?
Man.
Can you pick one?
That is so hard.
That is unfair, he said.
If I were to pick one, if I had to pick one species of chameleon, it would be between a Jacksonized Xantholophus, the yellow-crested Jackson's chameleon, and probably Daramensis. It's another 3-horned chameleon, Trioceras daramensis. And so I enjoy the 3-horned chameleons. But I think, if you give me one, I'd have to say the Xantholophus, the standard Jackson's chameleon. I just love those things.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Gotcha.
That's awesome. Well, thank you very much for coming on and being
very welcome.
A great resource. And it's been awesome. So as always, we're out here, we're hanging out. This is Reptile Hangouts podcast. If you have any questions or you would like to hear from somebody specific, or you don't know something, let us be your resource outlet. We will try to provide you with the best information that we can from the best people and the best sources that we can. So thank you guys again for tuning in. We appreciate all the viewers and all the likes. Don't forget to like the channel, subscribe, please. We would love to see you subscribe, and see you next week for the weekly episodes of Reptile Hangouts. So we're all hanging out. We've been hanging out with Bill Strand tonight. We'll hang out next week. Love to see you.
All right. Bye all.
Bye everybody. Thank you very much. Thanks, Bill.